Be clear, be clear. It's the 2nd of July. I want to talk to y'all today, man. Listen, I want to talk to y'all today about something I think is very important. I think it's very important. It's some shit called Stockholm Syndrome. Now, Stockholm Syndrome, it's a real thing. I ain't got no other device, so I had to write it down right quick. So let me tell you what Stockholm Syndrome by definition is. Let me read it to you and then we can talk about it a little bit. Stockholm Syndrome by definition, which is also called traumatic bonding or terror bonding, is defined as the psychological tendency of a hostage to bond with or identify with or sympathize with his or her captor. In other words, Stockholm Syndrome occurs when someone who is held against their will starts to have positive feelings toward the person or group who is holding them captive. Now, Stockholm Syndrome, it came from a situation in Stockholm, a bank robbery in Stockholm that occurred over about 6 days. And there was reportedly a dude named Olsen that was one of the bank robbers. Now, over these 6 days that these dudes held these 4 or 5 tellers or whoever, held them in captive and had a standoff with the police over them 6 days, man, the dude, they came in, it was like, it's a robbery. Everybody can get it. But over the 6 days, that monster, the bank robbers, the Olsen, this particular dude named Olsen, that monster showed little tidbits of kindness. He allowed one person to call their mother or something. He allowed one of the hostages to call their mothers, And in another instance, I think he had helped somebody get out. Like one of the persons had it was some situation. But the point is this. The dude came in with great monsterism. These robbers, these bank robbers, they came in and they took these bank robbers hostage. And they took these persons and they threatened them with life. I'm gonna kill you. We're gonna kill you right now if you don't cooperate. So the hostages were immediately traumatized. They're sent into a state of shock, fear. They have absolutely nothing going. They don't know what's going to go on. They have a complete loss of control, a complete loss of ability to do anything about it. So they send it to straight shock trauma. And when you go into trauma, it's a psychological effect that our body do. It's the same thing like possums. You say play possum. The possum just going into trauma. That's why they just lay dead and they just hope for the best. People have a tendency to do that too, but they don't play dead so much. They'll just go into trauma and just really just lock up. Their brain just go blank. So with that being said, they be completely traumatized by the situation. And then being traumatized by the situation, they're emotionally. And then with that, if you take a person in that state of mind and show them tendencies of kindness, they latch and they want some type of kindness. They want because they're in trauma. They feel extremely vulnerable. They feel traumatized by a situation, completely at a loss for control. So if you come in and give them any type of tidbit of kindness, even being the person that told them I'm finna kill you, I'm gonna kill you. And then by telling them that, they're traumatized, they feel like you're gonna do it. And then by just not doing it, going over, back and forth, and then just not doing it, that person becomes indebted to you psychologically because they feel like you just saved their life, although you were the person who threatened it. It's a psychological effect. It's called Stockholm Syndrome because the situation in Stockholm, but it's a true life matter. Any type of person that's put into trauma or is traumatized or terrorized by a situation, the first act of kindness that they come across, they definitely gonna latch on to it because it gives them some type of semblance of normalcy. I want to bring this around to black people here in America. I want to say that black people in America, we all as blacks, honestly, we can all be honest. Black speak, black thought, black action. Mayhams Social Media Coalition is only for the truth. The truth in order to get to us to a resolution to where we start winning again. But I say that to say, blacks here in America, we have obviously threats of violence. Threats of violence. We live in a perpetual state of trauma, a perpetual state of terrorism, a perpetual state of demasculinity, defemininity. We are constantly in a state of trauma here in America, psychologically. because everyone is focused on us. Everybody's focused on blacks. We are labeled whatever we're labeled, and those labels that society has put on us, those labels that society has put on the 50 million of us, although all 50 million of us are it is improbable and impossible for all 50 million to be the same. We have all been lumped into a group, one particular group. Thugs, hoochies, thoughts, whatever, rappers, gangsters, whatever. That's the basis of us. That's the psychological portrayal that blacks are given for the most part. And that leads to situations where blacks are killed and it seems to be okay. And we see this. Blacks, we see this on TV. We see perpetual racism. We see perpetual prejudices, bigotries, and perpetual actually murders of black people. You know, we watch the movies, we watch TV shows, we see the news, we go in our society and we see, hey, racism. It's okay to be biased against blacks. It's okay to be prejudiced against blacks because blacks are this, blacks are this, blacks are that. Again, the whole grouping of us, thugs, criminals, hoochies, thoughts, whatever. So then with them saying that that's okay for us to be seen that way, and then therefore perpetuating a cycle of terrorism on us. Because honest, to be honest, man, we see George Floyd, we see the situation with George Floyd. What did that do to us? Blacks. What did the situation with George Floyd do to us? What did the situation when you seen Breonna Taylor, what did that do to you psychologically? Psychologically, it put you in fear. Psychologically, it made you fear for your life. It made you feel like anytime blacks, let's be honest, anytime we go outside, we feel like we know we're going to come up against racism. We know we're going to come up against prejudices, going out to the stores, going out to the community, going out to anywhere where it's non-blacks. And then on top of that, we almost think that maybe, hey, we might get killed today. We might possibly get killed today if we get put up by the police. If we get put up by the police, we could definitely get killed today. That's a thought that goes through our minds. And that there alone, just that thought alone, that you could possibly be killed by those who are supposed to be upholding the righteousness and the laws of the land, that's proof of trauma right there. The psychological effects of that alone, being walked up to with a person that has a legal law to have a gun on their hip, and they have it in their hand or had their hand on their holster and they're ready to kill you at any given time. And for you to know that this person can kill you, and not only will they kill you, after they kill you, nothing to be done about it. That's trauma, yo. That's an extreme case of trauma. An extreme case of trauma. Stockholm Syndrome ain't got shit on the psychological effects that must have on a person on a daily basis. Blacks, we suffer from Stockholm Syndrome for a lesser word. We suffer from Stockholm Syndrome here in America, and like I said, you know, supposedly the first blacks that were brought over, which were not the only blacks that were here, but supposedly the first blacks that were brought over in 1619. And then after the Bacon Rebellion, which was maybe a couple of decades later, 1700s began slavery for blacks. So 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, 1800s we came out supposedly. So 200 years of physical slavery. And then 1900s and now going into the 2000s, another 300 years of. So we had the 1600s, which gave us servitude, which was a total identification stealing and then just thrown onto a land or thrown into a system that you are completely unfamiliar with under bondage, under traumatic, terrorizing bondage. And then the 1700s, 1800s, complete slavery. So there's no question there. 1900s, we have psychological slavery because there was oppression necessary in order to complete or perpetuate the government that was established. That's 400 years of trauma being perpetuated onto a people that does something to you psychologically. I read The Breaking of a Negro Woman by Willie Lynch. I read the Willie Lynch letter about psychological division and how, envy is greater than admiration or love. Black people, we feel some type of way about other people, but we feel some type of way about ourselves, and let's all be honest. We almost feel like these people, in the way that they feel about us, is almost justified. Let's be honest. There's some of us that feel like it's completely justified. I had a conversation with a guy at the work site the other day, and he was from Orange County. If anybody know anything about Orange County, it's a predominantly non-black area. County, period. He said that he doesn't allow racism to bother him. He said, you can't let it bother you. I have children. I have a responsibility. I cannot not let it bother me. So if that's the reason why I do what I do, everybody can ignore racism. Everybody can want to act like the bad things that happen in your life are okay, I guess, if you want to, But that's battered woman syndrome or battered male syndrome. I definitely have a domestic violence case. I definitely sat through trial for about 2 weeks. I sat through about 2 days of battered, with a woman going on a battered woman specialist. She was a battered victim specialist. And for 2 days, she explained what trauma is and how almost anything can be psychologically related to the bullying or traumatizing or abuse of another person. She said in the trial under oath that arguing with a person and disagreeing with a person perpetually, your spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend, perpetually, that if you do that every day, it's bullying and it's traumatizing, and that is abusive in itself, because that leads to this and that leads to this, and it's an emotional attachment that the person that you're doing this to begins to succumb to. And that emotional attachment that you put your spouse through is the reason why you're an abuser. This is what the specialist said. This is what school and textbooks have taught her. But I only say that to say this. If being in a relationship and it being abusive, disagreeing in a argumentative tone on a perpetual basis, a regular basis, is abusive, how is it that racism, prejudices, biases, bigotries that we experience through our movies, through our TV shows, through our culture, we have shows black-ish. In order to get on TV, you have to be black-ish. You can't be black, you have to be black-ish. That's the psychological perpetuation of Willie Lynch. How's it not? I'm telling you, that's how I feel about the situation. I'm telling you, when I deal with other blacks in my community, when I deal with other blacks, we do not have great pride for ourselves. And we treat each other like, and we accept others' treatment just alike, because we psychologically don't have a great feeling of ourselves. We don't have a great feeling about the portrayal of us. There's 50 million of us. Not 5 million, not 10 million of us are criminals. Yet 40 million of us are allowing themselves, 40 million blacks are allowing themselves that have never committed a criminal act, never done anything criminalistic or been on any type of paperwork, are allowing themselves to be overcome and overshadowed by 10 million. 80% of our race is being overshadowed by 10, 12, 13% maximum of our race criminal activity. And it's just that criminal activity, gangbanger thoughts and all that, is just being blanketed on our whole race. And not only is that being done, it's then being done and being justified by those who are doing it, and then it's been accepted by us as justifiable. It is not justifiable, man, to be biased against anybody, be prejudiced against anybody just because of a stereotype, an idea that's in your head. It don't even have to be, I don't even have to actualize it. You just got to have it in your head and you saying it's okay. That's what racism is. It's not okay to be racist. It's not okay to be okay with racism. If you're okay with racism, you might as well be a racist that opposes, and just be honest about it. If you're a racist, which just means that you're focused on race, be honest about it. If you're a racist and racism is important to you, which therefore you feel like you have an ideology and that ideology needs to be blanketed upon those who you are racist against, then be honest. Mayhem Social Media Coalition. I want to talk to y'all. I want y'all to understand. July 2nd. Juneteenth is past, but we still living. So let's perpetuate our black lives, our black living. George Floyd is past. His breaths have not been forgotten. They should not be. That's not a fad. It should not be a fad. Black Lives Matters. It's not a fad. You understand what I'm saying? It's not up for a conversation. It's not up for objective. Like, we ain't talking about this. It's not a discussion. Black lives matter. My son lives matter. My daughter life matters. Period. Mayhem Social Media Coalition. Black Speak, Black Thought, Black Action. To help make America great for all. By making sure that we do our part. Stay conscious. Stockholm Syndrome. Check into it. Maybe you're a victim of it. And if you are, what can you do about it? What can you do about it?